What is up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Touchline Talk Show. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the content I put out every single week. Really good show in store tonight. World Cup games to discuss for the first time. My biggest takeaways from the tournament so far. Then, segment two, couple other major developments here. Going to talk Kylian Mbappe and also check in on Leagues Cup. So kind of getting a little bit of everything. Some transfers talk, Leagues Cup, and of course the World Cup, which is where I'm going to begin with just some general thoughts and observations so far. I have three things I want to talk about based on what we've seen in kind of the halfway, almost the halfway point of group stage play. Most teams have only played one game. Some teams have played two. There is only so much to take away so far, but I have three main, I'm calling them reactions, takeaways, kind of using those two interchangeably, but three main themes I am seeing so far. The first one, very simply, is that there was this concern, and I certainly shared it, about going to 32 teams and whether that was going to dilute the product in the group stage. In no way, shape, or form has that happened. What has happened is that this has, going to 32 teams, has just proven and demonstrated how quickly this sport has grown on the women's side. It has been a massive success. And going to 32 teams was absolutely the right call because these games are competitive. They are more competitive, I would argue, than 2019 when you had fewer teams. Morocco, Panama, Zambia, only teams to lose by more than 3 goals. There were 3 games. Now, Zambia, it's happened twice, but there were 3 games at the Men's World Cup in December that were decided by more than 3 goals. So are there probably going to be a couple more before the group stage ends? Yeah. There'll probably be a couple more beatdowns. But proportionally so far, it looks better than 2019. I'm just kind of using that more than 3 as a metric to measure this. Because, of course, you can kind of frame it however you want. The point is, though, you're not seeing a bunch of 5-0s and 6-1s. Yes, you've seen some, but they happen on the men's side too. This tournament is just unbalanced no matter who's playing in it. But the only group that has really just kind of turned into a non-competitive race for first place is Group C, because Costa Rica and Zambia have gotten beaten pretty badly twice. And so it's a question of whether Spain or Japan is going to finish on top because those are your 2 teams that are going through. Other than that, though, everything is pretty much still up for grabs. And you look at some of these results. Starting with the favorites. U.S. Not all that impressive against Vietnam. Certainly were expected to win by more than 3 goals. Vietnam, defensively sound, defended well, didn't offer anything in attack, but kept themselves with an incredibly respectable scoreline. England had to find a way to get a goal to beat Haiti. Sweden had to rally to beat South Africa. We're not talking about the best teams in these groups outside of your obvious favorites here. These are teams they were supposed to dispatch easily, and that just didn't happen. Then you have the actual results. New Zealand and the Philippines both have wins. Jamaica held France to a draw. The next step is, can you go from the group stage as an actual test where you can't just assume you're going to beat people to how many surprises do we get in the knockout stage? And that's what we're going to have to wait and see over these next couple of games for most of these groups. Is it going to be 14 of the 16 teams we expected, where there were a couple you could kind of go either way with that second team? Or are we going to see somebody who has the opportunity for these results? A New Zealand, for example, in a group that's kind of turned into chaos, find a way to get through. Is somebody going to get a second win? Are we going to be significantly surprised by any of the teams in the round of 16? Because the first step coming into this tournament was got to get these games more competitive. And that has absolutely happened. That is proof. The expansion, it was time. It was the right call. You're seeing it with this tournament, and you're seeing some of the stories and the players you're getting to learn about because this field expanded to 32. The next step that we're going to have to wait and see if we're there or not is, do you kind of still already know who those 16 teams are going to be? Or are there going to be some surprises in there? And now it's not just this team might get a win, this team might be more competitive than you think. This team might actually get to the knockout stage. That's the next step in the development and the competitiveness of this tournament. But you've already taken a huge step here with the results so far, with the teams still in contention, with the teams that have won. Jamaica got destroyed 2019. Their goal difference, I think, was minus 11. Don't quote me on that. I was trying to remember off the top of my head. I'm pretty sure it was double digits, though. Already have a draw. Still very much alive. It's terrific to see, and that's obviously been one of the main storylines and one of the talking points, is just how competitive this tournament has been. It's phenomenal for the sport. The question is just how far can it go now? Can these teams not just cause issues in the group stage and really represent themselves well, but can they actually string together a couple results and get themselves into the knockout stage? Number 2 is what is going on with Norway and Spain kind of on opposite ends of the spectrum. I'm going to start with Spain because I don't have as much to say on Spain. I'm not putting very much stock at all in the actual results. Yes, they look spectacular against two teams that they should have handled the way that they did. Now, actually handling your business in this tournament, as I just talked about, not as common as you would think. So you got to give Spain props for coming in and looking as good as they were supposed to. The bigger part of this, though, what I do care about and what I do think is actually important for the moving forward in this tournament, is how focused and locked in the Spain team has been from the very beginning. Again, I don't know how much it means yet. We're going to have to see against better competition, starting with that group stage finale and into the knockout stage. But there's so much that has gone on with this team off the field. And you look at what they are doing on the field, you would never have known that. There is tension within this squad because of the Barcelona players, the Real Madrid players, the players who decided to leave. It's not like this is this well-oiled, cohesive unit that's all in this together. And you've got some players who are taking on more responsibility or who didn't maybe think they were going to be on a World Cup roster because the players who aren't here. There's just a lot going on. And yet, based on performances, you would have thought the team going through all of this was England, the US, Canada, I feel like has looked like a team that's battling their federation and is just kind of tired for very understandable reasons, because that is what's happening. Spain have come in and had no problems whatsoever. That is noteworthy because to me that opens up the possibility that they actually start looking like one of the best teams in this tournament and aren't just kind of on the periphery, which is where I expected them to be. I came in thinking their ceiling was probably the quarterfinals. I am now very much open to the possibility they reach the final. I'm still not putting them in my group of favorites. I need to see them against better opposition before I change my tune on that. But their ceiling is higher because I was so concerned about just mentally what this was going to look like and emotionally. And so far they have checked every single box in that category. That to me is the takeaway from what they've done so far. It's not about how they've looked. It's not about this from a score perspective and a dominance perspective. It's about the fact that they actually seem locked in and are putting together results in a way that very few teams in this tournament are. The way everybody else has looked, the door is starting to open up a little bit for Spain to make more noise than I thought. Still not convinced they're going to get there, but I am open to the possibility. Then we got Norway. It has been another really, really tough start of the major tournament. However, they still do have a decent chance to go through, assuming they can beat the Philippines, which you can't take anything for granted with this Norway team. But if they win that game, the way that this group stage is played out, schedule-wise, it's not a guarantee, but they're in a good spot, especially if they can win by 2-3 goals and give themselves some goal difference cushion. So, certainly there is plenty of hope left, but they have to win this last game now. And it's going to be difficult for them to win the group. But even if they get out of the group stage, Ada Hegerberg is hurt. Seems like she's going to try and play in that last game. She got pulled right before the second one. Kind of a last-second thing because of this groin injury. Hopefully she could play, obviously. You got that going on. Caroline Grant Hampson gets dropped to the bench. Goes after her manager for dropping her, then apologizes. It seems like they've got that all taken care of. But stuff like that just doesn't disappear. There is clearly tension and frustration here. And I thought this might be the tournament with Hegerberg healthy and back into the fold for a little while now. Graham Hansen in such good form for Barcelona that maybe they would figure it out this time. And, well, maybe they still will. I'm not holding my breath about this anymore. And by figured out, I meant a lot more than just get to the knockout stage or even just win their group. I meant actually live up to their potential talent-wise and get to the quarterfinals and give yourself a chance to get to the semis. Because there just aren't very many teams that have a 1-2 duo like that. And one of them is hurt, and one of them got benched. And then went after the manager for benching her. There's clearly systemic things going on here that they have not fixed yet. Maybe they can find a way. I'm out on this now. I was in at the beginning. I talked myself into it, and I am backtracking on that. I've seen what I need to see. They're in that category of I just can't trust it until I actually see it happen at this point. The other thing I want to bring up here, though, before I get off of Norway. In just under 2 hours, the U.S. is going to play the Netherlands in a game that will, in all likelihood, decide who wins that group. That game became even more important because of what is happening with this Norway team and what is happening in that group. I don't care how bad Norway look. From a talent perspective, which is really all that you are talking about when you are talking about the U.S., do you have the talent to kind of catch fire one day and have everything go your way and take advantage of these opportunities that kind of fall in your lap? Norway is the only team in that group that has that ability, that has players who can go win a game, decide a moment. The Caroline Graham Hansen, Ada Hegerberg type players. That is what I am trying to avoid if I am Vlatko Andonovski. There are probably better teams in that group. There are certainly more cohesive teams, more well-balanced teams. But I trust the best teams in this tournament to be able to get past a Switzerland, for example. That's just teams you have to play if you're going to be serious about contending in this tournament. And so if Norway doesn't win this group, now all of a sudden you are looking at that quarter of the bracket, assuming things go everywhere else as expected. with just nobody who's really going to scare you. And you're looking at the bottom half with a Sweden, with a Spain, potentially a Norway. And so not only did the U.S. get the quote-unquote easier side of the bracket in general, it looks like, assuming they win the group, the U.S. is going to get the easier side of the bracket. Where there isn't going to be a team that really is anywhere near their level until the semifinals. But that's assuming they take care of business against the Netherlands and get those 3 points. Because if you don't win this group and Norway end up dropping to second, now all of a sudden things get a lot more interesting if you're in that part of the bracket with a Spain, with a Norway, instead of where you expect to be up at the top. So that is the other part of this I wanted to bring up. It is incredibly important with the way things are going. If you want to give yourself the fewest amount of opportunities to face teams that are somewhat comparable to you talent-wise, that just on their best day might be better than you. It's even more important now the U.S. wins that group. And we're, a few hours away as I'm talking from figuring out probably whether that's going to happen or not, depending on, of course, things could go a different direction in that third group stage game. But if you beat the Netherlands, you got to feel pretty good about the situation. So that game, even more significance now with what is happening with Norway and with that group. Then the final thing, there is just no clear favorite. This is how I felt coming in, but it's just been reinforced by what we've seen so far. The first thing is that there have not been any eye-catching statement wins by the teams that I consider the favorites. Right? The U.S. starts with a 13-0 in 2019. Does it tell you all that much? No. But it's a statement of intent. It sends a message. You didn't get that from the U.S. against Vietnam. You didn't get that from England against Haiti. The only team that gave it to you was Germany. And Germany was playing one of the worst teams at this tournament from a talent perspective. And it was, it wasn't 10. Nobody has put up an eye-catching scoreline yet. And we haven't, starting with this U.S.-Netherlands game, we're going to start getting these. But we haven't gotten a lot of quality opponent matchups either, where you learn something because of the teams that you're playing in the group. We're going to get some, it just seems like these are all kind of at the end. We're going to start getting them here in a matter of hours, like I mentioned. So nobody has really done anything out of the ordinary that grabs your attention and makes you go, oh, they just look like they're the best team at this tournament. Because the teams that have impressed, outside of Germany, which again, I'm just not putting a lot of stock in a win over Morocco, are those second-tier teams, Spain and Brazil in particular. They've looked fantastic. I'm not putting them in my top tier of teams that I consider favorites just because they basically did what everybody expected them to do. Again, well acknowledging not everybody has done that this tournament. But you're looking for a statement from, England. Had England gone out and beat Haiti 8-0 or something. But sometimes, as good as that team is, they struggle to score. I will continue to talk about my questions and the concerns I have for the U.S. All that has really happened is that some of these teams that are more in the... I have them in my tier 2 as contenders that are more kind of on the dark horse side of the teams that could actually win this tournament. You're Brazil, you're Spain, and some other people are higher on Spain than I am. I will acknowledge that. But those are the teams you go, oh, maybe they can go a little bit deeper than I thought. Maybe they can make the semis. Maybe they can make the final and give themselves an opportunity to actually win this thing. That's all that's happened so far. And so the gap that was already not very big has just gotten a little bit smaller because the most informed teams are not the ones with the most talent. They're kind of that second group of other contenders. And so we just haven't learned all that much yet. And we'll be able to learn some more before the group stage, but it's going to be interesting going into the knockouts because that's going to be one of the first real tests for a lot of these teams. And so you get kind of one first impression there, and if it doesn't go well, you're done. And so maybe we get something over the next week or so where one of these, Germany continues to look really good, England turns it around, the U.S. gets a very convincing win against the Netherlands, something like that, where the conversation changed a little bit. But as far as I'm concerned for right now, this is still completely up for grabs, and the only thing that I feel differently about is that I'm giving more attention to the Brazils and the Spains in terms of the conversation about how many teams can win this tournament, who are legitimate contenders. They've opened that possibility up, as I talked about at the very beginning with Spain, which just means the gap between the top and the teams chasing them is even smaller than I originally thought. Great for the sport, makes it very hard to figure out what's going to happen next in this tournament.